The United States landed in Puerto Rico in 1898, following the Spanish-American War. What began as a political takeover quickly became something much more personal, an attempt to reshape Puerto Rican life. One of the clearest examples of this control was La Operación. Beginning in the 1930s and continuing through the 1970s, the U.S. government backed a mass sterilization program targeting Puerto Rican women. This resulted in projected rates of sterilization on the island between 1930 and 1970 varying between 30 to 40%, many without fully informed consent. It was sold as a solution to poverty, but it was really about controlling a population the U.S. saw as a problem. But more than just displacing natives and inhumanely experimenting on women, the U.S. also influenced how Puerto Ricans were identified. In her book, Inventing Latinos, Laura E. Gómez highlights a telling moment in that history. She writes, in 1930, when U.S. Census officials did away with the mulatto category, a term used to describe a person of mixed Black and European ancestry, Puerto Rican enumerators reacted by reclassifying additional Afro-Puerto Ricans as white instead of as Black, directly disregarding census instructions not to do so. In other words, when the system removed the middle ground, Puerto Ricans on the island pushed more people toward whiteness rather than toward blackness. Laura E. Gómez also states, a century after American occupation, by 2000, Puerto Rico had become even whiter. 80% of islanders identified as white, yet for Puerto Rican migrants to the mainland in the same year, only 47% said they were white. This was not random. It was driven by Spanish colonial practices already rooted on the island, elite efforts to prioritize whiteness, and a desire to meet U.S. racial expectations. For many, claiming whiteness was not about denying who they were, it was about surviving in a system that was not built for them. With the Jones Act of 1917 granting American citizenship to Puerto Ricans, they were allowed to move freely between the island and the United States. And in the 1950s, with the largest wave of Puerto Ricans moving to the U.S., known as the Great Migration, most Puerto Ricans packed up everything they knew and made their way to New York City holds the largest Puerto Rican population of any city in the United States, and with the large movement in the mid-20th century, Puerto Ricans entered one of the most racially diverse cities in the world. That environment did something to Puerto Rican identity. Rather than being forced into a binary, Puerto Ricans in New York found themselves in a city where layered identities were not the exception, they were the norm. Thus, the Puerto Rican identity expanded. It became Nuyorican, it became Afro-Latino, it became something that could hold more than one truth at the same time. And by the 2020 census, we saw a change in identification not just in the United States, but also on the island, where only 17.1% of residents identified as white alone, with many choosing two or more races or some other race, highlighting a shift away from the traditional broad classification of white on the island. But besides the numbers, we could see the representation on the big screen. In 2018, Sony released Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, with Miles Morales as its main character, an Afro-Latino teenager from Brooklyn with a Puerto Rican mother and an African-American father, taking up the mantle of Spider-Man. Its sequel, Across the Spider-Verse, continued his story, with a third film on the way in 2027. These are not small films. They're critically acclaimed, culturally celebrated, and widely seen. And for the first time, a character who exists at the intersection of Black and Latino is the hero of his own massive franchise.
And the Oscar goes to? Mimi, you were right. Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse.
U.S. imperialism forced Puerto Ricans into a rigid racial binary, but that is not where the story ends. From the island to New York City to the big screen, Puerto Ricans have continuously pushed back against the pressure to be only one thing. The rise of Afro-Latino identity and its celebration in mainstream media shows that a community once told to simplify itself has instead chosen to be fully, proudly, and completely everything that it is.
A- in English.
She's a tough grader.
And a B in Spanish.
What?
Woo, okay.
You
Mira,
kill
eso
your
es
mother.
imposible.
Cálmate, mami. Eso no es my fault.
¿Qué es eso que esto no es my fault? ¿Tú estás tomando una clase en español?